Honorable Waters.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. We welcome the remarks of the Minister in regards to the rule of law and that it should apply to everyone in South Africa equally. That's one of the reasons we had a couple of debates regarding the President and the rule of law in this House, and I believe that your comment certainly calls for consistency, and we welcome that. But while we note the remarks of the Honourable Minister, we look forward to his department also focusing on the real work of land reform that is not being done in turning a corner or turning words into actions. As virtually everyone in this House agree, concentration of ownership in the hands of a few rather than many, owning a stake in the assets of an economy, leads to unfair limitation of opportunities for advancement of especially the poor in South Africa and also elsewhere in the world. It limits the opportunity for the poor to find a meaningful and proud role in the economy. It entrenches the mindset of despair, and it closes an opportunity to access jobs, education, and a better future. It causes anger and resentment, leading to illegal behavior. It creates the politics of class and race and gets expressed in extreme cases, in our context, in illegal land invasions, violence, and it destroys hope. This department plays a fundamental role in providing a vehicle to change exactly this very dynamic, and treat what is a historical problem as an opportunity for the future of all South Africans. Surely all of us in South Africa will flourish and prosper together if all of South Africa has a foothold in our economy that allows our talents, ideas, and energy to translate into prosperity and security for all of us. The Democratic Alliance over the years has, however, learned to take statements emanating from this department and the ANC government in general with more than a spoonful of salt. We've heard about the NDP, we've rediscovered the RDP. The fact is, these are empty gestures unless the real work gets done. This government, since 1994, has spent more than 80 billion in pursuit of a target of having 30% of commercial land transferred to black ownership. This should be seen against an estimated value of commercial agricultural land of 1.92 billion. More broadly, billions and billions were lost each year by the ANC government that could have been spent on land reform, in wasteful expenditure, fiscal dumping without meeting targets, and of course the ANC's perennial bed partner, corruption. Just recent examples include the continuous SAA bailouts, infrastructure budget overruns like Medupi, and then in broad terms, just a drop in the ocean really, the symbol of corruption in South Africa, Nkandla. Some of us, of course, call Nkandla the only successful act of land reform under the ANC. A cynical joke showing the contrast between ANC propaganda and that it really values a few people, a few connected few. Money itself, therefore, was never the problem. The will to actually succeed and the determination to deliver were the missing ingredients. Given the fact that up to 6% of commercial land ends up on the land market every year, it is clear that if the available finances were used effectively, we would have had a transformed and growing agricultural sector, delivering jobs in both this sector as well as the secondary and tertiary sectors of the economy. In fact, if this outgoing government was serious about jobs, it would have recognized that agriculture and by extension land reform is one of the sectors with the highest ratios of job creation in relation to economic growth, a key tenet of a developmental economy. Rather than using the opportunity land reform represents to create a fair society, the ANC government has the following track record in delivering land reform. Firstly, only around 7% of commercial land acquired. Despite the financial resources, only 7% was required. The government blames the willing buyer, willing seller principle, but the truth is that the acquisition is so mismanaged that it often takes years to process sales. If this department was an estate agent, it would have been out of business and reported for unethical practices long ago. Comrades and cronies' properties are still in business. No wonder sellers drive up prices to cover their running costs while they wait forever for the ANC. It is more a case of waiting seller, waiting buyer, and a sleeping ANC. Secondly, a massive failure rate of creating successful farming ventures exists. In 2011, this government had a 90% failure rate in its land reform ventures. This is the government's own figures, not the DA's figures. It improved in this regard to what the ANC is actually proud of, a 73% failure rate when recap funding was used to support the failing projects. Of course, not inherently dealing with the problem, but simply throwing money at what were essentially becoming state-supported farms. Thirdly, the ANC did nothing to ensure title deeds, or at least proper long-term tenure secured for occupants of state or communal land. There was a march recently. People living in communal land areas belonging to CPAs want title deed. The DA wants them to have title deed. This prevents the rural poor from accessing opportunities in the marketplace and making these desperately poor, forgotten areas prosper and attractive investment. It thus demonstrates that it prefers to keep the poor from owning property, stealing their futures, and in an act of hypocrisy that sustained colonial and apartheid practices in the past by keeping the poor dependent on government and using poverty and state largesse as mechanism to maintain a voting bloc for itself, it continues to do this. It continues to with the practices of the past. The DA has seen grand gestures and posturing before. We have heard other grand policy announcements and gestures from the minister and his department. The problem with ANC policies are that they're really aimed at fooling voters. We have seen are not being fooled anymore. Our committee has to date only seen the Esther Amendment Bill of all the grand statements and gestures of this department since 2014. We are pretty sure a rush of more ill-conceived legislation will hit the committee towards the 2019 election, coming from an ANC desperate to conceal its consistent failure. A prime example of this is how the Constitutional Court ruled the Restitution of Land Rights Amendment Act when it clearly caught the ANC trying to pull a dirty, when it rushed through legislation to distract voters from the truth in 2014. These are the facts. Madam Speaker, if we want land reform to work, we must look at best practice. The DA in the Western Cape has demonstrated an up to 80% success rate with its land reform projects. It spends more on services to the poor than any other province. The DA believes that land reform is a serious priority, and the fact that it's not being dealt with is causing all these problems, and we do not have the time for more empty gestures. We challenge, and this is a genuine offer to the minister. We offer our support in the Western Cape in land reform. We take it seriously. We want to lead by example, and we challenge the government to follow suit.